How many times must you ask me what are the best settings for the Sony a6500? Hey guys, so I've been asked a lot about which settings are best for the Sony a6500. Now, all that is subjective. Just because my settings fit for me doesn't mean that they fit for you. But I wanted to share with you my favorite settings on the Sony a6500 so that you can use that as a proxy to customize your settings that fits your style. Okay, so let's get started. So with me, I have the Sony a6500, and what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to erase all the settings I've already made on this camera, and that way we're starting on the same page. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the menu, we're gonna go to setting reset, and initialize. Oh, I don't want to do this, but no, it's about you guys. It's about you, not me, you. So once your camera is fully reset, it's going to take you to this menu. And if you bought yourself the Sony a6500 and you're turning it on for the very first time, then this is the menu that's going to pop up. Choose your language. For me, it's English. Enter the area, date, and time. And then you're going to press enter again. Take you to this menu, press OK, not important. Now time to customize it. So what we're gonna do is that we're going to go to menu, and there are 6 tabs right on top, and we're just gonna go through each tab from left all the way to the last one. So here we go. So for the quality, this is in regards to the photography settings, and what I like to do is shoot RAW, because it's just much easier to edit in post. It's just setting RAW, next setting, that's fine. Okay, so drive mode. So this depends if you want to shoot fast or, just shoot slow. I love shooting fast, so I'm just gonna click that because, well, let me show you an example. Okay, enough playing. Okay, next one, memory. We'll get to that in a second. That's pretty important. Okay, focus mode. It is set at automatic AF. If you are taking photographs, that's fine. But if you are filming, then I would actually recommend going to autofocus continuous. Because one of the best features about this camera is its autofocus feature, which is just amazing. So once you set it to autofocus continuous, everything else should be the same. Focus area is wide. I like using wide because I'm able to use the whole screen to focus. And the 6500 does a pretty decent job as far as figuring out which subjects to focus on, so that's why I like keeping it out wide. The same thing goes for photography. It's pretty good, so I just leave it out wide. Okay, scroll into the next menu. I normally leave that the same. Don't touch that. ISO. Okay, so this depends on what you want to do. I kind of like choosing auto, so that when I'm filming from outside to inside, it automatically changes the ISO very smoothly. And so that's a handy feature. But in some cases, if I'm using a variable ND filter, I keep it on a certain ISO, like at 200. And that way, when I want it to be dark, then I can do that manually using the variable ND filter and not have the camera adjust its ISO settings. But for now, we'll just do auto. And I will just continue on to the right. That should be fine. I don't use flash. Now, it's good to know your white balance, and it's good to be consistent, especially if you're filming interviews. So this is going to depend on you. I personally love using auto white balance. It does a pretty darn good job. But if you want to keep your white balance consistent, it pretty much has all the presets that most cameras do. But for me, I like using auto white balance because I just don't want to have to think about it. And now the fun part, the picture profile. Now, I get asked a lot, if not the most, about which picture profile that I like to use, and it just depends. Now, there are a bunch of different picture profiles that are great for different situations, from no picture profiles to the picture profiles that are great for photography to the flatter profiles like S-Log2 or S-Log3. But what I like to do is I like to customize picture profile 8. Now, picture profile 8 is set to S-Log3. I'm not a big fan of S-Log3. A lot of people swear by it, and it's great for dynamic range, but I just don't really care for it. I kind of like shooting everything right in camera and adjusting here and there in post. And so what I do to customize this is that I would select PP8 and I press right on my dial, and then I'm going to change 2 things. I'm going to change the gamma from S-Log3 to Cine 4, and I'm going to change the color mode from S-Gamut 3 to Pro. And the reason why I like using this is that I found it to be the most natural looking picture profile setting, and Philip Bloom recommends this, so I will trust anything he says. And I found this to be true from experience, so that's what I like to use. The customized PP8. Lately, however, I've been really liking using Picture Profile 2, and it's made for photography, and I like that look for film, and so PP2 may replace PP8, but most of my content has been filmed with a customized PP8 at Cine 4 and Color Mode Pro. Okay, moving on. Next menu, no, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Oh, okay, so peaking color. I normally like using red because it stands out the most, and that only appears when I'm shooting manually. Having a bright color like red when I'm focusing manually really helps, especially if you're filming outdoors. But if you're colorblind to red, then choose something else. Okay, next tab over. I don't do that. All right, finally to the second tab. If you are customizing your film settings, make sure you click the option on the dial to the film option. It looks like a little film strip over there, so make sure that is set to film mode, and then you can customize it there. Otherwise, certain options on the camera won't appear. So by default, the movie SQ motion is set to program auto. We don't want that. We want manual. So just press the menu button and make sure to select manual exposure, and that way you can customize your film settings properly. So just like that. So now we're going to customize our film settings. The first thing I want to do is that I want to customize my 4K settings. And so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to choose for the file format a6500 4K. Okay. And for the record settings, there are two options that you can choose. For me, I like using 24p at 100 megabytes a second. The more data, the better to use in post. But if you don't have an SD card fast enough, then you can choose 24p writing at 60 megabytes a second. Now, there's not a significant difference between the two. I like having as many details as I can, so that's why I choose 100 megabytes a second. But if you don't have a fast enough SD card, then 24p at 60 megabytes a second is totally fine. But for now, we'll just do 24p at 100 megabytes a second. And for the autofocus drive speed, at 24 frames, I just keep it at normal. Moving on to the next menu. For the autofocus track sensitivity, I like responsive. I like using responsive because it just looks really natural to me. Onto audio recording level. By default, it's set at level 26, and that's fine for using the internal mic of the camera. But if you're using an external mic like a Rode VideoMic Pro, I've found that setting the audio recording levels at 11 is the best because there is a good balance of low hiss and no peaking when it comes to recording people. Okay, moving on. Next page, I believe the same. Make sure your steady shot is on. That is the camera's in-body image stabilization, which is an awesome feature of this camera. Keep moving on. Okay, so for your zoom settings, you have the option to do just optical zoom only, or you can do clear image zoom, which means you can actually zoom further than what your lens can normally achieve. And how that happens is that the camera actually zooms in on the sensor. But from my experience, there isn't any image loss and it just looks great. And so I always keep that on. Just in case if I want to pull in tighter on a shot. All right, moving on. That should be good. I don't like turning on zebras just because I want to see what the image looks like. And everything else should be pretty much left the same, except I like to set my power save time start to 2 minutes. Otherwise, it just keeps turning off. Okay, back to the main screen. So if you look over here in the bottom left, that is the 1/50th, that is the shutter speed. If I'm shooting at 24 frames a second, you want to make sure your shutter speed is double that. Really, it should be 1/48th of a second, but 1/50th is as close as we'll get to, so that should be fine. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is saving the setting to a custom button that you can assign to. And here's how to do that. Go back to menu, and you're going to go to tab number 1, go to page number 4, and select memory 1, and press enter. And what that does is that whenever on my dial mode I go to number 1, those 4K settings that I've just made will be ready for me to go whenever I select custom button 1. I also love shooting in slow motion, which I set to custom number 2. But since I haven't set that yet, let's go set that right now. So to customize your slow motion settings, go back to the menu on tab 2, go to file format, and the 120 frames a second feature is only available when you select XAVCS HD. And then for record setting, I typically use 120p at 100 megabytes a second. Again, if you don't have an SD card fast enough, then feel free to use the 60 megabyte version. But in this instance, we'll just choose 100. And for the autofocus drive speed, since we're shooting in slow motion, you want to make sure you select fast, because when it's played back at 24 frames a second, that fast will actually look like a normal or slow speed. So make sure to choose fast. And for everything else, it should be the same. So let's go back to our main screen. And since we're shooting at 120 frames a second, double that should be 240, but since we don't have that option, 250 will be the closest option. But now I want to save this preset to custom button 2. So to do that, go to tab 1, page 4, memory, and go over and choose 2. And there you go. Okay, let's test it out. So let's go back to number 1, custom button 1, and that should be my 4K settings. And looks like that's it. As you can see in the top menu, it says XAVCS 4K, 24 frames a second. Shutter speed's there. That looks great. Okay, now let's go over to custom button number 2, and that should be my slow motion settings. And there you go. Everything should be set. It looks perfect. Woo! That was a lot. Dance break? So I like to take a lot of photos with this camera, and there is a little hack that gives me a third custom button preset, and it's actually this. If I go to manual, if I select manual and make all my settings there just for photography, whenever I go to manual, it will go to those exact settings, much like the custom button 1 and custom button 2. So let's go ahead and do that right now. For shutter speed, I like to keep it at 1/60th of a second, and just for the heck of it, let's just go 100 for ISO. Most of it should be left the same, and the only thing I really like to change is the picture profile, which I either keep it off, but lately I've been really liking picture profile 2. It just gives it a nice contrasty look to it. All right, let's test it out. So if I go to custom button number 1, that should be my 4K setting. Okay, here we go. There you go. That looks pretty good to me. Okay, now let's go to custom button number 2, which is my slow motion settings. That looks pretty good to me. Yep. And lastly, let's go to the M, or manual, and that should be my photography settings. And there you go. Now there are other settings that you can customize on, like I don't like using the touchscreen on the a6500. You can also change your function menu to however you want. Really, that's all up to you. But for the most part, those are my settings for the Sony a6500. And that's it. Well, hopefully this video was helpful to you guys, and if it was, then I would appreciate a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so, then hit that subscribe button, and you can follow my journey as I build my company and brand. Speaking of which, I'm gonna start making content on how to build a YouTube channel so I can help out you guys trying to do the same thing. So if you have questions on how to build a YouTube channel or questions on filmmaking and storytelling techniques, then comment below or hit me up on Instagram and Twitter. I really love engaging and communicating with you guys. It just means a lot to me knowing that other people are being helped by the content that I'm producing here on this channel. To me, creativity and knowledge is meant to be shared. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love this community, and I love interacting and engaging with you guys, and I just love the fact that we're all in this together. But I gotta go, and so I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.